Hey guys, as you can see, I'm post-op. Today is post-op day 2 from my dental implant revision surgery. And honestly, the first night after surgery, like the night of surgery, was probably the scariest. At least of this, no, I would say it's probably been the scariest of the entire experience. I almost did not sleep. I got very little sleep that first night, and it was not from pain, oddly. It looks much worse. You can see I'm getting a little bit of a black eye. There's some bruising there on my lip. I'm very swollen. But oddly, it's not super painful, just like pressure. But that's not what almost kept me from not sleeping. Throughout the evening, my mouth, like, I just kept, like, there was a lot of blood coming out of my mouth, which I expected some blood, but, like, after a while, you expect it to be more like pink tinged saliva, and it wasn't doing that. It was still very deep, deep red. I went into the bathroom and looked in my mouth, and it honestly just looked like my whole mouth was full of blood. My first thought was, I'm bleeding too much, right? I started to lean over the sink, and these big clots like started hanging out of my mouth, and there was just blood dripping, and it scared me. I didn't know if I was losing a blood clot that was supposed to stay in place, because, you know, after you have oral surgery, you want blood clots to form. It prevents, you know, I know it's not a socket, but like it prevents dry socket or from the wound from drying out, so you want blood clots to form. So I didn't know if I was losing a clot that should be there. I didn't know if couldn't even tell where the blood was coming from, honestly, because I have the roof of my mouth is the donor site for the bone and skin graft that they did in the front here. So I didn't know where the blood was coming from. It was just like everywhere. So after panicking, I'll be honest, I panicked a little bit, and after I panicked a little bit, I did what they told me to do. I took a piece of gauze and I pushed it up. I have a stent in the top of my mouth to protect the area, the donor site. So I took a piece of gauze, pushed it up on the roof of my mouth firmly, and held it in place for, they told me to do it 20 to 30 minutes. I think I did it closer to 40 because I was just kind of like freaked out. But I put it up there and I held it in place with really firm pressure. And I just sat there for, like I said, like 40-ish minutes. And at that point, I felt like the bleeding had slowed. I did change the gauze once during that time, and the first time it came out, it was very, very, like, full of blood. There was a large chunk of a clot attached to it. So then I put a fresh piece of gauze in there. I kept holding it, and at the end of the 40 minutes, it was just like pink tinged, like saliva on the gauze, so I felt comfortable. But I was still, you know, a little bit nervous about like what had just happened. Was that normal? Was something wrong? I don't know. So I had panic called and emailed my surgeon's office in the middle of it all. And the first thing the next morning, the office called and offered to have me come in and see Dr. Dalla before going into the weekend. That way we could just make sure everything looked good, calm my fears. And thankfully he immediately put my mind at ease. He explained that what I experienced was actually pretty common with this kind of surgery. The blood clot itself is supposed to form. It acts like that natural bandage or scab to protect the surgical area while it heals. And the plastic stent is there to protect the donor site, you know, where they took the graft from. What he explained happened was that there was some glue. They use glue to close up some of the area inside. So there was a piece of glue that was kind of hanging towards the back of my throat, behind the stent. And as blood was oozing out from under the stent, it was collecting around that rough piece of glue and causing like this big clot to form. And when I got to the office, there was still a bit of a clot back there. And he couldn't see the glue at first, so he didn't tell me that right away, but he just said, it does look like there's still a clot in there. I want to have my assistant come in and take out the stent, clean it out really good, flush it with saline, wash off the stent, put it back, make sure that they were good to go. So that is what we did. They removed the stent. They cleaned out the remaining clot that was there, told me everything was looking really good, and that's kind of when they could see, once they cleaned it out, that was when they could see that piece of glue there. So they removed that extra piece of glue that was at the back too. That way if it continued to ooze, it wouldn't form another clot sticking to that glue. So that was a huge relief, and they had me stay there. Like, I was there for a good solid hour, I think, but like once they took a look and examined me and like cleaned the stent and all of that good stuff, she had me hold the gauze up there, make sure it wasn't actively bleeding anymore, took some more pictures, everything looked good. She put the stent back in my mouth, gave me lots of instructions on how to handle it the next few days. And I felt much more comfortable leaving. But one other thing is, when I left surgery on Thursday, I was really still pretty incoherent from the anesthesia. It was, I don't know if it's because the procedure was shorter, but when I left anesthesia from the original, or when I left the office from the original dental implant surgery, I wasn't groggy at all. Like, I was fully awake. I walked out of the office. On Thursday, when I had the revision surgery, I had to be wheeled out of the office. Like, I was not steady on my feet. I was like, I don't remember a whole lot of it even. Like, I remember leaving and I remember getting in the vehicle with my mom, but I don't remember the drive home. But by going in yesterday and seeing Dr. Dalla, I was able to learn exactly what happened during surgery, which was really nice. So I knew before surgery they were planning on doing a bone graft and a tissue graft, but because I was still waking up after anesthesia, I never got to hear what they actually ended up doing, right? Because there was also talk about putting in an additional implant in the front, where the one that so I had that small tissue infection. That's what Thursday was for, was to repair that. They didn't know if they were gonna have to add another implant to replace that one, take that one out and put a new one. They just didn't know what was going to go on in there. The x-ray kind of looked like maybe towards the bottom of the implant there had been some bone loss, so he just wasn't sure what all he was going to have to do until he got up in there on Thursday. So yesterday I was able to find out exactly what happened. Dr. Dalla explained that they actually removed that upper implant that was right here, right where that the soft tissue infection was. And this is like a really big piece to me, because that implant hadn't actually failed. He said that that implant had integrated into the bone. However, the reason that he had to remove it was actually preventing him from being able to build up the gum tissue correctly. There was a pretty big indentation in that area from the soft tissue infection that I had to have lasered and cleaned out. And with the implant sitting there, there just wasn't enough room to build healthy gum tissue over the top of it. So instead of trying to force it, he made the decision to remove that implant and rebuild the foundation correctly. So he actually performed 2 bone grafts in that area, one along the outside, along the ridge, and then he took tissue and stuff from the roof of my mouth and grafted it into the upper implant area to build a thicker, healthier gum tissue and eliminate that indentation. He also released some of the pressure in the tissue so that it has room to heal and grow more naturally, instead of being stretched so too tightly when it heals. So for now, I only have 5 implants across the top, which kind of sounds weird or scary when you first hear about it, but what Dr. Dalla said is he might not even need to replace that sixth implant. Like, if you think about it, there's lots of people that just do all on fours, and I have all on four on the bottom, and I had all on six on the top, and now I just have five on the top. So as everything heals over the next few months, they'll do another CT scan and reevaluate everything. So at this point, I go back in 10 days for post-op surgical check-in. I keep wearing the stent. I'm on a fully liquid diet right now. I take out the stent and I rinse with warm salt water or saline, salt water. Just liquids, lots of water, lots of protein shakes. And then in 10 days, I'll go in and they'll reevaluate everything as far as the healing from the bone and tissue graft. And then in 3-ish months, when it's time to start thinking about next steps, they'll do another CT scan and reevaluate everything. If the bone and the tissue heal the way that he's thinking and hoping, I may just be able to move forward with final teeth using just those 5 implants on the top. And honestly, I was not expecting to hear that. When he told me that he had to remove one, my first thought was, crap, there's another surgery, I'm going to have it replaced. So I'm very thankful to hear that that's not necessarily the case. The surgical assistant then also went over all of my aftercare again, which I'm really glad she did, because like I said, I barely remember anything from after surgery. So right now it's all just about protecting the grafts, protecting the donor site, protecting the receiving site, making sure that everything just heals. So lots of ice, lots of warm salt water, doing very gentle swishes. Like, I can't do no straws or anything, even like nothing to create suction in my mouth, because the donor site is like almost like an open socket. Even with the stent in there and the glue and the stitches, it is still just basically an open socket. So have to really be careful and make sure that we're protecting that. So rinses with salt water, I'm just kind of like going like this, no swishing, no spitting, no straws, nothing to cause suction, like I said. The clot that's up in there now is very small, and it's actually protecting everything that it needs to while it heals, and I don't want to disturb that, right? So I'm sticking with a liquid diet, like I said, and honestly, the roof of my mouth is definitely the sorest part, and it's really only sore when I do the salt water rinses, so maybe I'm using too much salt in my salt water, I don't know. But other than that, it's really just pressure. My lip definitely feels like it's gonna pop. It keeps getting bigger, which is pretty funny. I thought yesterday, I was like, wow, that's massive, and it's pretty black and blue, and I have a little bruise here, and then I woke up today and it looks like I'm getting a little bit of a black eye, which they warned me, was very likely. But my lip is definitely more swollen now. So just gonna ice and rest and drink liquids to try to get some nutrients in and heal. The stitches that are in there will dissolve over the next 4 weeks. So right now it's just a game of waiting and healing, right? Just healing. So as somebody who has been documenting my journey from beginning to now, I've realized something over the last couple of days of this experience. And that is, even when you do all of the research and even when you trust your surgeon, recovery can still be scary. Your brain immediately goes to worst case scenarios, or at least mine does, because you don't know what's normal, and this is like the first time you're experiencing this, right? And I think one of the reasons I keep making these updates and sharing these updates is, if somebody else is sitting at home after surgery and looking at like a giant blood clot like I did and panicking the way that I did, maybe they'll run across my video and they'll realize that they're not alone. I'm definitely not saying like ignore something that worries you. If you feel something is wrong, always call your doctor, call your surgeon. That's exactly what I did. But yesterday reminded me how important it is to ask questions instead of assuming the worst. So for now, I'm taking it one day at a time. I'm being patient. I am following all of the instructions. And I'm just hopeful that these grafts heal beautifully and I can finally move to the next chapter of this journey. But yeah, so I will keep you updated as I have been and always do. And thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys have a wonderful Saturday. If you're watching this on Saturday, otherwise, I just hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching. And if you're going through a journey like this, share your experience below. I hope you're healing well, but thank you for being here with me. Bye.